To get your fish to grow well, you'll need to feed them. This is one of the most important parts of fish farming. Also, it is one of the most expensive parts of fish farming, generally between 50 and 60% of the costs. Using conventional pelleted feed is often advised. It is predefined ingredients which will be good for your fish to grow, especially when they are small. Higher quality feed will be needed. Feed making. The main ingredients in fish feed for your tilapia are fish meal. This is dry powder made from fish byproducts or wild caught fish. It is usually an especially important part of the feed due to its high protein and nutrient content. Soy meal is the powder form of soybeans. It has nutrients and a high protein content. If you do not have access to soy meal or fish meal, feeding young fish will be difficult. If the fish are very young, conventional pelleted feed is recommended. Other ingredients are maize meal. This has good caloric value and the starch can help with the binding of the ingredients. Cassava flour, which is very good to add some calories, and the starch is good for binding. Rice bran is the final of the main ingredients needed for your fish feed. It has a lot of calories and carbohydrates. Usually this is also available for quite low prices. Other important ingredients would be some oil, usually from soybeans. This has calories and helps with the bindings of the ingredients. For tilapia, other products can be used in the feed in moderation. This can be cut up leafy greens such as spinach tree, moringa or morning glory. Additionally, old food products can also be used in moderation, especially if there's no salt added, like old cooked rice for example. Feeding the fish. There are multiple ways to feed the fish. The main difference will be according to the style of your feed. If you have conventional pelleted fish feed, then the focus will be to throw the feed spread out to cover as much area of the pond as possible. This will ensure that fish can eat as much as they want in peace. If you have a large number of small fish in the pond, then it is recommended to have some small pellets so they can also eat. Furthermore, if you have a pond with mixed sizes, feed the big fish first. Once they have eaten, then feed the smaller fish, so the smaller fish can also get fed. If you feed wet feed, then you should build a feeding tray out of a net material to lay it on when you feed the fish. If the fish feed does not float, it is not recommended to throw the feed in the pond like dry floating feed. This feed will sink to the bottom of the pond and the fish most likely won't eat it. Feed storage. Conventional pelleted feed is usually bought in closed 25 kilogram bags. These bags should remain closed until they are used for feeding. When not used, the storage should be in a closed place that is dry and dark. Also make sure not to move them around too much because this will lead to a large amount of feed dust which will impact your pond's water quality. Ideally, the bag should be kept on a pallet above ground. It is important to keep your storage clean to avoid pests. If you buy your feed in bulk, it is not recommended to keep feed for more than 3 months. It might go bad. When you open a fresh bag, it is important to assess the quality of the feed before you give it to your fish. The feed should not have any bad odor. There should especially not be any moldy or rotten smell. The feed should still be dry. If it is wet and sticky, examine it very well to make sure there's no fungi. But it is probably best to throw this feed away because fungi can produce toxins that are harmful to your fish. If you make your own feed and feed it wet to the fish, it is recommended to make it every day before you feed the fish. This feed cannot be stored because the moisture will attract bacterial and fungal growth. The ingredients should be stored like the conventional feed in secured and closed containers in a dry and dark storage. When you mix your feed, do the mixing outside of the storage so when something spills, it is not inside the storage. Feed planning. Feeding a fish is straightforward. More difficult, however, is how much you need to feed your fish per time, per day, weekly, per month, and the entire growth cycle. The easiest to find out will be per growth cycle. First, you'll need to define how long you will grow your fish for this cycle. If the fish are getting conventional feed to get to 0.3 kilograms per head, it'll take around 5 months. Maybe a bit less, maybe a bit longer. And you have 1,000 fish in your pond. Your final biomass will be 0.3 kilograms times 1,000 heads. So you'll have around 300 kilograms of biomass. Now, to get your fish to the 300 kilograms of total biomass, you'll need to feed them. Tilapia, on average, will need around 1.5 kilograms of conventional feed to gain 1 kilogram of biomass. Therefore, 300 kilograms of biomass times 1.5 kilograms of feed per kg of biomass equals 450 kilograms of total feed needed for your growth cycle. Now you know how much feed you'll totally need for the entire cycle. Now we can break it down into months, weeks, and days. In the first month, it'll seem like the fish aren't growing that fast. You'll ideally get around 40 kilograms of biomass in the first month. Thus, 40 kilograms times 1.5 equals 60 kilograms of feed. You might need less than this because when the fish are smaller, they're actually growing faster, so the range of feed needed will be between 40 and 60 kilograms. After the second month, your fish should be around 100 grams each. So that means from your previous month, the pond biomass gain was 50 kilograms. And that is 50 times 1.5, around 75 kilograms of feed. After the third month, your fish should be around 100 grams heavier, which means you'll need around 150 grams of feed for that month. At the end of the fourth month, beginning of the fifth month, your fish should be around 0.3 kilograms each, meaning over the last month, they need to gain another 100 grams each. So for the final month, you'll need another 150 kilograms of feed. In total, if you calculate it, 60 plus 75 plus 150 plus 150 is 435 kilograms. So for the whole cycle, it'll be around 435 to 450 kilograms of feed. Breaking it down into months makes the planning easier, especially the feed storage, so you don't have to store the feed for too long. Breaking the amount into weeks and days is fairly easy. There you can divide by weeks and days. So for example, 150 kilograms divided by 4 is 37.5. So you'll need around 37.5 kilograms of feed per week in the final month. And 37.5 divided by 7 is 5.6. So you'll need around 5.6 kilograms per day. As a notice, these calculations will help you with your rough planning for the production and financial planning. It is important to see how your fish are eating. If they are still hungry, feed them more. If they aren't, feed them less. Documentation. Feed documentation is also very important. In the previous chapter, you were able to calculate and plan how much feed you would need for an entire cycle. However, this is aquaculture, and you're working with animals which often don't fit into a nice, neat calculation. Some days it'll be too hot or too rainy, so your fish aren't hungry and you reduce feed. It's important to know how much you actually are feeding to be able to compare with your calculations and see if you're on course. Writing down the reality will help you plan better for the next cycle. Maybe your pond is incredibly healthy and stable, so your fish grow faster and you can feed more. You will be able to use this data to adjust the planning to make it more clear how much you'll have to spend on feed in the upcoming cycles. Conventional fish feed will be the highest operational cost for your business. When feeding pellets, make sure a wide area of the pond gets feed. When feeding with wet feed, use a feeding tray so the feed does not sink too fast. Store dry feed in a dry and dark space. Make sure the bags are closed and that there's no feed lying around. Try not to store the feed longer than 3 months if possible. Do not feed bad smelling or rotten feed to your fish. Feed planning is a necessary tool to know how much feed you'll need for your production. Documenting how much you are feeding is necessary to make sure your planning is correct.